Hello, my name is Emma and welcome to part 3 of how to heal from extreme PTSD, anxiety and prolonged stress. So today in this video I am going to share on 3 different life areas that when focused on helped me personally to create a lot more stability, security, nervous system regulation, and a general sense of upliftment and support, which directly helped with my experience of extreme PTSD and anxiety and prolonged stress. And in this video today, I'm going to be touching on things like our own spiritual connection to our own instinct and intuition and self-trust, and how listening to ourselves and our own guidance system and our own spiritual support can guide us to the correct resources that help us personally with the correct avenues and support systems that are going to help us with our experience of PTSD and anxiety. Now, if things like spiritual topics don't resonate for you personally, you can translate this as just having a connection to your own self, your own gut, a self-trust, and a trust in your ability to know what resources or forms of support are correct for you. So we're starting with that, and then we're going to move on to the topic of co-regulation and social support, and shift into the area of financial support and resources and creating stability in that area of your life. So the timestamps will be linked in the description below, and let's get started. Okay, so I have my notes with me today, and I will have a link to a PDF in the description below, which will have all the resources I mentioned in the whole series and all the links to those resources in that PDF, free for you to download or have a look at. So starting off with our connection to ourselves and our spiritual support, I spoke about this in the first video, part 1, how the power of, which might seem like a missing piece for a lot of people, but the power of having a connection to your own sense of a higher power or spirituality or self-sourcedness. So your sense of creator, created, that could be nature, it could just be the fact that you're alive. You could be very atheist, but you believe in the energy of life or the quantum world or the science of how life comes into form. But it's a faith in something that can stabilize you, connect you with a sense of safety within, and give you a sense of guidance and being supported through life that is bigger than anything external, like a social dynamic or a relationship or a job or any external resource that can give you. It's a core anchoring thing, part of you, that will carry you through life. And especially when you're going through such extreme states of fear and PTSD or any like strong states of stress, having that internal anchor, that internal light, that internal connection to something, to a core thing that can carry you and support you, is so powerful and underrated. And I think a lot of people throughout the world do understand, obviously, the power of that spiritual connection, but when it comes to mental health as well, I don't think it's fully understood in the ways that it might be in the future, because we need to be able to rely on something and depend on something, especially even just ourselves and our own ability to discern and understand and guide ourselves through life. That's very important. So bringing it back to today's topic, that sense of connection and self-trust and self-guidance through life can really help us in finding the right resources for us. So this is in the arena of, counseling, social support, your self-care, your nutrition, the right, if you're in the world of spiritual communities, the right people and ideas that really resonate with who you are. The right groups of community can be really important to keeping you in balance and on track. You don't necessarily need that, but making sure you're not exposing yourself to groups that don't have a negative impact on your own self-empowerment. self-empowerment is really important here. So having that strong sense of spiritual support internally creates a sense of power internally, because you've got a self-trust. You can lean on yourself and your higher self, or the universe or nature. You can lean on something instead of having to reach outwards, because things outwards are often in flux and often shifting and often a mirror of what's going on internally. So when we get that stability internally and we can rely on, depend on ourselves and trust in ourselves, we have that foundation that can then reach outwards, where we're able to rely, depend on and trust the people, things, situations around us. So that stability internally is going to create us choosing right action, right situations, right environments, right support, right community. And as we do that, those resources, those external support systems become this beautiful reinforcing mirror that starts to signal safety back to you, back to your body, back to your psyche, back to your mind, back to your soul, back to yourself. And it creates this beautiful loop that starts to repattern our relationship to stress, experience of PTSD, how our body translates PTSD. It's this beautiful thing that we can use our external environment to signal safety to us. But it's also very important to make sure that the chooser, that stability within, is choosing those signals in the best way possible for us. So as an example, if you're not really connected to your instincts very well, or you're not listening to your instincts very well, and you're allowing yourself to go to environments and be around people that perhaps might appear to be helpful, but probably not the best fit for you, or maybe not have the highest intention, or don't have the ability to know how to give the highest intention. That could be just inappropriate therapists, spiritual groups that are a bit weird, friendships that may appear to mean well, but deep down don't, work environments, things like this. So you might have the objective things in place that could be helpful and supportive of you, but if you don't have that instinct in place, that sense of self-trust in place, and these things are a bit off, they might not be the most trustworthy people, the spiritual support might not be as balanced or as good as it could be or correct for you, the friendships around you might not be as positive as you might actually need, or supportive as you might actually need. The work environment might not be reinforcing your gifts and skills and abilities in a way that allows you to grow. That loop is going to be all out of whack. You're going to get these signals that actually continue feeding back instability internally, unsafety, a fight and flight in your system. It's not nourishing you at a deeper level. So the reason I'm bringing this up for me was really leaning into my trusting in my own spirituality again, which I talked about in part 1, and developing that self-trust again allowed me to start to trust the choices I was making in life, starting to trust the people I was encountering, the counselors I was working with, the types of therapies I was seeking out, the nutritional support that ended up really helping me health-wise, the supplemental stuff, the spiritual ideas or concepts that I was encountering. It helped me to move towards more life-enhancing, beneficial, benevolent versions of those things, which actually allowed things to start to heal, instead of going in a direction of dodgy counselors, dodgy support. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say here? You got to get the cart before the horse is what I'm trying to say. So having that spiritual support can really help guide you to exactly the nutritional programs you might need, exactly the right therapist, the right body work, the right forms of exercise, the right way to set up your sleep programs, your nighttime routines, the things that are really going to actually work for you, given your unique system, how you got into states of stress in the first place. Like, to put it simply, your higher power, the universe, kind of knows what's best for you. You know what's best for you, but trusting in it's actually, to explain it better, yourself, your higher self, is just the wise part of you, knows exactly what's going to work best for you, knows exactly the right types of foods that are going to really nourish your body where your body is at. It might be different for someone else, but that wisdom knows what's correct for you. So bring this all down into a nutshell. Self-trust is going to guide you, and at the end of the day, it's going to help you find exactly what you need. But as an example, some of the things that I did and was guided to was, so I was guided to EMDR therapy, which is a form of therapy for PTSD, which kind of works with the left and right side of your brain to reprogram how your brain and your nervous system transmutes in response to stress, or how triggers activate or deactivate in your body. So generally what that looks like is you might go to a therapist. They might have this machine which has little buzzers, and it's just a slight vibration, and it will sit either one hand, the left hand and the right hand. You might hold on to this thing. The therapist will put the machine on and you get a gentle buzz on both sides. And as you're doing that, so it's stimulating the left and right side of your brain as that's buzzing. As you're doing that, you might be discussing a topic, bringing up a certain belief or a memory. And as that charge of that belief and memory comes to the surface in your nervous system and your psyche, conscious mind, that buzzing from left to right is happening. And it's creating a sense of stability and safety in your brain and nervous system. So it's turning this highly activated state in your nervous system and your psyche and your consciousness into a more calm one through this signal of safety from the left to the right. So that's one way that EMDR therapy works, and that principle I've also shared through some of my nervous system regulation tools. It's a way of activating your vagus nerve, creating regulation through your nervous system, and therefore de-patterning these states of stress in your body and communicating and signaling safety to you. That's one form of therapy you could do. You could do cognitive behavioral therapy, which works with deeper belief systems, from my understanding. You can do things like talk therapy to really help you process the emotional charge and the stories and the patterning behind what's creating stress for you, if you understand it. There's things like somatic experiencing, which I have mentioned in the previous video, so I won't go too deep into that one, but you could look that up. I did things like basic self-care, nutritional support. So I discussed that in the first video as well, but finding or being guided intuitively to the right nutritional protocols that really help my body to start to heal, especially my adrenals, my nervous system, my brain, from the huge amount of cortisol and stress that was flooding and flushing through my system for a long time. So there was a lot of healing and repair that needed to go on, and I'm still in the process of doing at a gentle, paced out way as I'm continuing forward. So also, as an example, you relying on your instinct and intuition to guide you to the right doctors, the right practitioners, the right specialists, being able to trust yourself to know that what you are being suggested to do by these medical support systems is correct for you, because we still have choice. And we definitely should always have choice around our bodies and what's right for our bodies, and being able to trust the information we're being given is correct for us. Also being able to know when we might not know, as in, if someone's suggesting this is going to be really good for you and we might be a bit resistant to it, there's that instinct underneath that says, okay, I think they might be right, this professional might be right, I might need this. And you can trust yourself enough to know to give something a go, but also to know when, actually, no, that feels very wrong. And I had to do that a few times with different forms of suggested healing protocols, which I knew instinctively would be very not healthy for me and make things worse more than likely. So it was a real process of trusting my own instinct in going, okay, this isn't correct for me, but I'm going to trust that something that is correct is going to come my way. And that came to me through things like meditation. I asked my higher self, my angels, for the support. I asked people around me. It's very practical as well. You can verbally reach out for support. You don't just always have to rely on your intuition. But it's trusting yourself in knowing what's best for you and your ability to find what's best for you. Like, it's not hopeless. You're not helpless, even though you might feel that way. Even though you feel like maybe the reason you're in this position right now is because you can't trust yourself anymore. Maybe the reason you got to such a state of PTSD is because things occurred in your life that were so severe and so traumatic and so painful that you lost a sense of self-trust. This healing from PTSD is such a deep form of trust. It's everything that we do, that we start to resource ourselves with, that we allow ourselves to be supported by, repatterns trust back into our system. It heals that broken trust. It heals that damaged or bruised or however our trust has been affected. It heals it through these tiny steps, this self-empowerment, this self-reinforcement, this rebuilding of this almost template of yourself internally that creates that strength and empowerment within and heals what went awry. And I want to say here as well, at the end of the day, like at a high perspective, things don't ever truly go awry. Like, that's just my belief. You might see this differently, but even when things seem to go really off path or really downhill or bad things seems to happen and you cannot understand how you got yourself in that position or how it got to be so bad or how you just simply cannot cope. Even when you're at your worst, or it feels like you're at your worst, sometimes you're at your best. Sometimes you're right in the messy middle of where your heart and soul intended to be, because there is juice, there is growth, there is transformation, there is power, there is light, and there is life. So sometimes you're right where you need to be. Doesn't mean you need to stay there. Doesn't mean you need to build a house in this traumatic space within yourself, but to not judge it and to go, how do I not know that this is not the catalyst for this version of myself I was always meant to become? So potentially see the power in that if you want to. So, as I mentioned, the medical support you can be guided to by trusting yourself, trusting your instincts as you're navigating, resourcing medical support, emotional support in the form of counselors, therapists, body workers, physical therapists, whatever it is you're needing, and whatever practitioners you feel you might need on your path to healing physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and whatever other level. I'm not sure what other levels there are. And I'm going to move into the topic of social support right now, which ties into this. So it's also trusting your instinct in social support, because there is this element in our nervous system that's really quite powerful when we employ it or implement it. So this element of social support and co-regulation. Co-regulation is a form of nervous system regulation that occurs when we're in the proximity of another human being or an animal, someone with a nervous system that assists in regulating us. So, for example, you could have pets that are very calming. Cats often do this. Dogs can do this. Or any animal you feel a safety with, they can help to relax your nervous system by being near them. It's almost like this electrical kind of signal gets permeated into your nervous system. And if you're buzzing, that calm can kind of soothe you into balance. There's this co-regulation of a nervous system. We do this in relationships, especially in very more intimate relationships. We are able to regulate each other. If you're very close with someone, you are having a physical affection and you might be cuddling them a lot, their nervous system and your nervous system starts to bring each other into balance, which is also why when something is a bit triggered perhaps in one person in a close dynamic, and their nervous system might go into fight, flight, freeze, or a fear state, that can create a disharmony in the other person or a fear in the other person, and that kind of attachment trigger can create a dance that can become a little bit unbalanced and unhealthy if we don't learn how to regulate, balance ourselves, and bring ourselves back to center and bring the whole dynamic of that relationship back into balance. Now, this can happen in any relationship dynamic, but especially happens in very close romantic connections, because they're very close relationships. And I've heard Dylan James talk about this online, where he says, from his perspective, romantic relationships are the same level of closeness as are familial relationships as children. And this is where the whole principle of attachment styles and attachment theories come in. And that makes sense to me. So with the social support and co-regulation, this element of, if you're going through perhaps extreme PTSD, you're having a lot of anxiety and stress, it can be very powerful and sometimes the last thing you want to do, but very powerful to put yourself around other people. And maybe it's hard because you're so stressed, literally. You're maybe in a state of panic and fear. It's hard to hold a conversation. So don't push that element if you're not there yet. But even just being in a public place where you can stand in an environment where there are people around with regulated nervous systems, where the environment is safe, you're being signaled safety from the people around you back to your nervous system. So, everything's safe in the environment, things are kind of warm, nothing bad's going on. So your nervous system starts to realize it's safe to relax. I can calm down. This is a reprogramming process. In other ways, like in friendships or acquaintances where there's eye contact, can help calm the nervous system down. It sends warmth to the heart, to your vagus nerve, to your whole body. It's connection. And especially, you want this to be healthy connection, not unhealthy connection, but you get to trust your own instincts about what those healthy connections are. But as an example, if you wanted to go to a shop or sit at a cafe or a park where there's, general activity, plenty of people around, enough that you feel comfortable with, and allow the nervous systems of other people to help calm and relax you. This is why if you've been really distressed, or really emotional, or had a traumatic event occur, it can be really helpful not too long afterwards to just be around other people, to talk things out, to allow their systems to soothe you and show you that at least right now in this moment you're safe. And this also reinforces emotional support, spiritual support, a sense of physical support in your life, because you have these connections and relationships and friendships, or just even people or see regularly. That can be a really powerful tool that you can consciously do. So you might want to set an intention. I don't know what your personal lifestyle is like if you don't already have this, but I noticed this when I was doing it more intentionally, how powerful it was for me. But making sure at least once a day, especially if you're someone who spends a lot of time alone or at home and you're in like a imploded space with your mental health or anxiety, at least once a day, getting yourself outside, provided you're physically able, and putting yourself in an environment where there are other people around. You don't have to talk to them. You could just, for example, you could go get a juice or a coffee or have a glass of water in a cafe where there are other people seated, and really let yourself sit there maybe 10 to 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, and just notice, especially if there's a nice buzz of movement and happy people or calmer people around you, or even people who are just like high energy doing their thing, you'll notice at a subtle level. You should notice at least, or at least I do and others do that I've spoken to, that your body will start to relax, and after a while there'll be more ease, there'll be more a sense of greater well-being, connectedness. And this is also healthy for us on every level, for our brains, for our neurons, for the way we take in our environment and perceive the world at large. And it also affects how we perceive the world socially. If you're looking at your phone a lot and you're seeing, the programming of the news come at you, putting yourselves in these healthy spaces where you're encountering, for the most part, healthy, generally sound-minded people who have generally warm intentions, is going to help reinforce, actually, hang on, maybe the world isn't as bad as they're trying to tell us. Maybe people are generally good. Maybe generally I'm safe. That doesn't mean I abort my own instincts about things that are off or out of balance, but for the most part, maybe life's okay. Maybe I can handle this, and maybe I can let people in, or at least maybe I can let myself be supported and connected in a way that feels good to me. So that's a resource you could think about if that feels good to you. It's quite powerful. It's powerful at a physiological level. Even if your mind and your emotions are a bit introverted and you don't want to do it, you can find a way to utilize the well-being, without, that sounds a bit vampiric, but utilize the relaxation and the calm nervous systems of those around you, because we're social creatures. We're meant to be around other people. We help each other innately. Our nervous systems naturally connect with those around us at an electrical level. We sense our environments for a reason. And the last topic for today is going to touch on, for similar reasons, slightly different because it's a different arena, was financial support. And support might not be the right word, but financial stability was the right word, actually. Stability support. So this might be an area of your life that you really have in check, that you're really comfortable with, that you're like, yep, I'm good here. I feel supported in this area. But often people who are going through a lot of stress and PTSD have this area of their life affected if they're not already set up financially to begin with. Because often people can't work or create income streams, or their functioning is really dramatically affected by the PTSD. So it's a catch-22 in a way, because your functioning is affected, you're doing your best to survive, but if you've found a little bit of stability in your nervous system, or a little bit of healing in this area, in terms of like PTSD, and you notice that financial instability is creating stress for you, because it's connected to the survival part of ourselves, so the fight, flight, freeze, which directly connects to PTSD as well, or directly feeds into that being less easy to balance. If you are able to, so this is a component that don't have any pressure about yourself on, because it may not be the right time for you, but if you are able to give some attention to this part of your life, whether that's resourcing the right financial support through social support, social security, especially if you're in that much stress, you're not able to create money for yourself at this time. Options of income streams that are easy to add to your life, or any type of aligned work or ways of creating income that you can add in that feel good for you. Adding this element in of even just addressing the money you do have flowing into your life, and making sure it's not too much is not going out, like making sure you've got more coming in than you've got going out, so you're not creating this subtle panic constantly and this sense of living in survival mode, or finding ways, even if you have not been a good saver before, you might be, but if you haven't been, finding ways to learn how to save just that little bit and build self-trust around resourcing yourself and being supported at that physical primal level. I noticed this to be a game changer for my nervous system when I was in a position to be able to address some of my financial beliefs, budgeting, learn how to save some money. I remember the day when my nervous system finally went, there was this pitch of panic that would sit under the surface for a lot of my life, because I was operating in a certain way with money. And then I created a certain amount of stability in my financial resources, and it was like I must have hit a threshold or a glass ceiling, or whatever it is we have in our subconscious mind when it comes to money stuff. But I reached that point where at a subconscious level or in my psyche, it was like, oh, this is enough for me to now feel safe. But as soon as I hit that point, there was a huge shift in my nervous system. A huge sense of calm came over me. I felt like I could finally relax. Now, it wasn't perfect in that, you still develop and grow in these financial areas, and that's going to be part of life we're always in relationship with. But addressing or having a look at your relationship to money, how that affects your nervous system, your relationship to sense of security and safety, that can be powerful too, because a lot of us have our own thermostat to how much we feel we need, whether that's coming in or saved or in backup money or cash in our life, to feel safe and secure for whatever amount of time or whatever reasons we have that would give us a sense of safety and security. So if you find for yourself I might need this much in savings, or I might need this much coming in, or I might need this much to be able to purchase this thing that makes me feel safe if needed. If you can just, if you discover there's a number there's a number that feels right to you, see if you can bring that about in a easy way, or see if you can adjust your budget to create savings or build towards that direction in an easy way. And even just the act of addressing your finances can start to calm your system down if you have panic in this area. Even just looking at what's going out, what's coming in, it gives you a sense of control. And it's a form of self-care as well. It's providing for yourself, taking care of yourself, caring enough about this part of your life that you're willing to give time and energy to it. And that creates a sense of protection and support that you're able to give to yourself. And it's not perfect. Like, obviously, life is spontaneous. Things change. We can't always depend on a fixed thing, so don't get too hung up on it. But just developing a relationship with your own resources and money in that way can be really powerful if you're going through a lot of stress as well. So I'll reiterate one more time. If you're in like the extreme explosion state of PTSD, where you literally just can't sleep, you can barely eat, you can't function, that's probably not the right time to address that part, unless, of course, you need money to survive and you have to just figure out how to get that money in a healthy, legal way. But, Social Security, getting those resources in place. Once you have those in place, maybe address first the nervous system, the nutrition, the relaxation techniques to just kind of bring more balance in. And when you've developed enough sense of like, okay, I've got a bit of breathing room, you may want to look at how are my finances going and how's that going to give me even greater sense of support and trust and relaxation. So some of these things may not resonate for you, and that's okay, and they may not be relevant to you. These are just things that I added in over time, over the years, and they were like, some of them came in one at a time, some a few at the same time, but these are some of the things that, when brought together all at once, they created like this life pie, all these different areas of your life that you bring balance into, that create this sense of stability, which creates more safety, which makes it easier to release traumatic states in your body and your nervous system and the things that feed into PTSD. I want to also say, like, everyone's experience with trauma is extremely unique. Some experience very severe, prolonged trauma, and that's going to be a completely unique process for those individuals in what's going to work for them healing-wise. They might really need a lot of medical intervention, psychological intervention, to be really working with practitioners in a more intensive way. And that is okay. Like, that's required. And that should be something that, if that's you lean into. You don't have to do this all by yourself. What I'm sharing here are things you can do to support yourself alongside those things, or things to consider as well that really assisted me. And you might be someone who's had less obvious trauma, but you're still experiencing extreme PTSD. And in that token as well, it's really important not to judge yourself or compare yourself to someone else. Like, well, I shouldn't be affected this much. I shouldn't have so much anxiety. Like, nothing bad's ever happened. I had a good childhood, blah, blah, blah. There are so many things that feed into what creates anxiety and PTSD that are beyond our conscious understanding. There are things that are just things going on in your body. There are things that might have occurred that you didn't understand that affected you at a deeper level, at a subconscious level, that are feeding into these patterns in you. There are environmental stresses, things we take into our bodies that affect our bodies that we don't even know might be in there, like, heavy metals and all sorts of other things that you might have health stuff going on that you don't realize is contributing to it. Like, don't compare yourself, because we don't really ever know what's creating things all the time, or why it's more intense for some than it is for others. And no one should compare themselves in that respect. Like, trauma is so subjective and everyone experiences it differently, and it can be just as painful even if the event that occurred, I mean, without taking from the emotional impact of extremely horrible events, but the sensation of PTSD in your body, that fight and flight, that cortisol through your veins, at least at a physical level, can be so painful, even if the events that created it seem disproportionate to what we think should have created PTSD. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any further questions, you want me to cover any more topics on the topic of PTSD, which I probably naturally will, but if you have anything else that you'd like me to cover, or things I forgot or missed, or just anything, feel free to comment under this video. I will link the links to both the part 1 and part 2 of this video series in the description below, and the link to the PDF links for this entire series will be in the description below. So all the links to everything I've mentioned, and I'll go over the notes of everything I've mentioned. So it's just so you have a resource you can look at and go, oh, that's what she said, without having to rewatch the video every time. So that will be in the description, and I hope you have a great day, and thank you for watching and for listening, and I hope at least something somewhere in this series was of benefit to you. Okay, bye-bye.